we're back, and we're joined now by the co-owner of the Giants, John Mara. John, welcome. How are you?
I've been better, Mike. How are you?
John, you've had a couple of these through the years. Would you say this is one where you felt as compelled during the season to do something as you ever have?
Yes, I would say so. It's also been, quite frankly, the most surprising one. I never would have dreamt this in a million years back in September that this would be happening, particularly during the season.
Well, you guys were very confident. You thought you had a good team on your hands.
No question. I thought this was as good a roster as we had had in many years, and felt very confident going into the season, as did most people around the league about our roster. It was, essentially the same defense, with the exception of one guy, Jonathan Hankins, who left us last year. But we had a second-round draft pick, Tomlinson, who we were very confident in, and the offense was improved, we thought, because we had added some players and added some draft picks, and so I thought that there was nowhere to go but up, and obviously it has not worked out that way.
I agreed. The only thing was you were playing a little Russian roulette with the offensive line. That's the only thing. You didn't, Jerry didn't spend a lot of the assets on that this year.
Well, that's true. But it was the same offensive line pretty much that we went 11-5 with last year. We expected them to take a step forward this year. We also expected, us to have a more dynamic passing game this year. But then all the receivers got hurt, but we got off to such a bad start at the beginning of the season offensively, and then what was really startling to me was our defense did not play well, particularly at the start of the season when we had, I think there were 3 games in a row there where we had leads late in the game and failed to hold them. And a year ago, we win those games, and this year that didn't happen.
No question. Defense never got it together this year. I totally agree. And even the players who played wonderfully last year have taken a step back this year. Plus, Vernon being hurt has been a big loss, too. You mentioned a lot of injuries. His especially crippling. I want to get to him in a minute. But first things first. Number one, Jerry today, he coupled the GM and the coach. Is the reason you sent Jerry packing because you felt they were into the decision together, or was it just to get a jump on the GM search?
Well, I mean, it was a little of both, I guess. I think that Steve and I talked before the game yesterday, after the game again, and then agreed to talk this morning. And we knew we were heading in that direction anyway, that changes were going to be made after the season, and we ultimately decided that there was no point in waiting and prolonging the agony for everybody. It would have just led to endless speculation from now until the end of the season. We certainly were conscious of the fact that 3 of our remaining 4 games were at home, and we were conscious of the reaction that was going to generate for both of those individuals. And also, it certainly tactically it gives us an advantage in being able to begin our search for a new general manager, not having to wait until the end of the season.
We're talking with John Mara, the co-owner of the team and the man who handles the football end of it. Did the overwhelming, and I don't remember a reaction for a player ever being as completely in his corner and as overwhelming as it was for Eli this week. Did that impact your decision?
It really did not. I know that seems to be the popular perception out there, but that really had no effect on the decision. It was more based on 2 and 10 and where we were heading. That was the underlying factor. We knew that we were going to make changes at the end of the year, and we just thought that there was no reason to prolong it any longer. I mean, certainly the public reaction to that was unlike anything that I can remember, but that really didn't have anything to do with it. It just was the overall state of the franchise. We just felt like we needed to make wholesale changes.
If you had won yesterday, I know it's a hypothetical, but would you have made the change today if you had won the game yesterday?
Probably, Mike.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, who's to say for sure? But we knew we were heading in that direction. It was just a question of the timing on it.
Did the coach know before yesterday that he was going to be gone?
No. No, obviously I was very disturbed. We were very disturbed that report came out yesterday because no decision had been made. We had agreed that we would wait and talk after the game, Steve and I, and that's what we did. But no, he did not know that.
John, one thing that I know that I've tried to counter this past week is the idea that you did this in order, or benched Eli, or moved in that direction to try and tank games. I know how much that's against anything you believe.
Such nonsense. That is such nonsense. I can't stand sitting there watching us lose games. Okay, I don't care, if we're 15-0 or 0-15. I want to win the next game, and I've been around too long and been through too many tough seasons and too many great seasons to ever stand for doing anything like that. And three of these four games coming up are division games, and if you don't think I want to win those, then you just don't know me.
Did you? Well, I do know you, and I know that this was something you did want to win the games, which is why I thought the plan made no sense, because what if Eli was playing well? He made it seem like Eli was coming out no matter what. Did you want him to present that if Eli was playing well, he'd be staying in the game?
What I really wanted, Mike, and I accept the blame on this one. I mean, people are killing Ben and Jerry Reese for this. I knew that Ben's original plan was to make a change at halftime, and my intention was to speak to Ben and talk to him about being a little more flexible than that. If Eli's playing well and the offense is clicking, then leave him in the game and let's try to win the game.
Absolutely.
But if things are faltering and we need to try to make a switch to try to jumpstart our offense, sort of like, then go ahead and do it. But let's not have a hard and fast time for pulling him out. But in any event, by the time it was presented to Eli, and then he rightfully rejected that, and we he wanted a statement put out, so we put the statement out, and then it was kind of too late to reverse all that. Now I'm not sure what's going to happen the rest of the season. I really haven't had a chance to go through that with Steve Spagnuolo yet, and ultimately, I never tell a coach who he's going to play and who he's not going to play. I believe you let the coaches make those decisions and let them live or die with them. And I think I know I'm putting Steve in a tough spot here, but I'm going to let him make the call on that. I mean, if he asks my opinion, I'll give it to him, but I'm going to let him make the call.
You want to tell us what your opinion is?
No, I'd rather express it to him first, if
John,
you don't mind.
I get the idea, and I don't think it was I'm not trying to paint a personality problem, but I got the idea that McAdoo was burning to play somebody with more mobility at the position. That's something that he thought was holding back his offense. Is that fair?
I don't think that's an unfair statement. I think he, listen, it's no secret that we've had issues on the offensive line this year, and certainly that makes it more difficult for a quarterback who has some mobility issues. And Geno Smith is somebody who can move around quite a bit, and I'm sure that was part of his thinking. But the thing that I give him credit for was having the guts to make a decision that he knows is going to be unpopular, but that he believes is in the long-term best interest of the franchise. And what I mean by that is by playing these two other guys and trying to find out something about them. The easiest thing in the world would have been for him to have stayed with Eli and stayed with that and not added another controversial subject to his resume. But he made a decision that he thought he and Jerry both thought were in the best interest of the franchise going forward, however unpopular it proved to be.
John, we're talking with John Mara, of course, the co-owner of the team and the man who handles the football decisions for the franchise. You painted very, very nice pictures of both these guys. You said they'll both be successful again. You said they'll both win again. Jerry, you've been with a long time, as you mentioned, from 1994. But let me get to the coach for a second. He's been a head coach here for less than 2 years. He had success last year. Was there part of you that wanted to try and save him but felt you couldn't? Or did you feel this year was so far past what anybody could have lived with that he had to go?
It's both, Mike. It was both. Yes, I kept hoping that we would turn it around and show some life in the second half of the season, because I couldn't understand. I know we had a lot of injuries, but we were 11-5 last year. I thought he did a very good job, and then things just spiraled out of control this year. So I was hoping he could give us some reason to make a different decision, but I thought we just passed the point of no return here. And sometimes, and I use this expression in the press conference, I mean, this was just a perfect storm for us, a combination of certain guys not playing up to their potential, other guys getting hurt, and then all the controversy that surrounded some of the decisions that were made. And you have a situation where the defense isn't playing as well as it could have. The kicking game starts to struggle, which really hurt us in a couple of games, and then the offense failed to get on track all year long. So all of that led to where we are right now at 2-10.
Is there anything McAdoo could have said to save his job today?
No, I don't think so. And he didn't really try to do that. He was a complete professional. Always thanked me for the opportunity. He said he appreciated being here, and I appreciated the way he handled that. I mean, he certainly was not surprised by our decision, but I'm sure, being the competitor that he is, he was not happy with it. But I thought he handled it as well as he possibly could have.
And it wasn't this past week, even the Fura over Eli, that was the final straw. It was the defeats that were the final straw, right?
Yeah, it really was, Mike. The thing has been building, with each defeat, and with me looking at the team and the state that we're in right now, and the way certain guys were playing, which is unfortunate. It ends up always falling on the coach's shoulders, but there's no secret that certain guys here are not playing as well as they should be.
Did you have a problem with the discipline on his team this year, John, and the issue of the idea from Beckham on forward? Did you came out and spoke when Beckham pulled that nonsense in the end zone? He didn't. He defended him. He always defended Beckham. Was that to his detriment?
Well, I think he felt that I had made the public statement about that, and I think his feeling was always to try to defend players. He probably could have taken a different tack there, no question about it. But the bottom line, Mike, and Ben even said that to me when I went in to talk to him today. The bottom line is we didn't win enough games, and that's really what it ends up being. But certainly there were some discipline issues. We ended up suspending 2 different players, which was a huge disappointment to me that those 2 guys put themselves in that position. But overall, bottom line is we just didn't win enough games.
John, you said you begin the search immediately for a GM and have Ernie and Corsi. What's Ernie's role going to be?
Just to consult with us on the process and sit in on the interviews. He's obviously not only he's a close friend of mine. He's somebody that I have a great deal of trust and respect for. His judgment. I've known him for a lot of years, and he has served that role for a number of other teams over the past few years, and I was just grateful that he was willing to do it for us this year.
Is Chris Mara a candidate, or is he a non-starter?
He does not want to be a candidate, I don't think, for the full-time position, but his input is certainly going to be something that is very crucial to the final decision.
And you mentioned some guys you'll look at, which will open speculation about college guys or big coaches or guys who are out of jobs right now. So there are some candidates who right now are not employed who will be candidates?
There are some candidates who are not employed who will be candidates, but I don't want to get into any specific names at this point, Mike. Now, you've always liked the division of power, something that George Young stressed, and I know you're a big believer in that. Is that something you could compromise if it was the right candidate? If it was the right candidate, I think it'd be highly unlikely, but I think if the right candidate came along and made a very convincing case, would I consider that? Of course I would consider it, but I've always felt that the ideal scenario was to have a general manager in place and to have a head coach under him.
What are you looking for in a general manager?
Well, somebody who's not only a good talent evaluator, but somebody who's a good communicator and somebody who knows how to build a team. I mean, there's a difference between just evaluating talent and knowing what you have to build a team. What are the crucial positions and where do we have to concentrate our resources in terms of the salary cap and whatnot. But ultimately, the talent evaluation ends up being a critical factor. But it's also being able to be a leader and being able to communicate with other people in his department and being able to gain the respect of other people in his department.
Well, do you want to have the GM in place, John, so that he can be involved in the search for the coach, or is that not imperative for you?
No, it's important. I would never say that absolutely has to be the case, but ideally and in all likelihood that will be the case, that we'll have the GM in place first.
But obviously you are going to sign off on any head coach.
Oh, yes. No, that's always going to happen in this organization as long as I'm around.
Spags is a popular figure here, so let me touch on him for a second. He's the interim guy. You said he'll be a candidate. Will these next 4 games be his resume? Will these games have to be something that is impressive for him to have a job? I mean, or can he still be a candidate even if this team doesn't play up to any expectations?
Well, I mean, he'll be a candidate because I think we owe him that. But obviously the next 4 games, I mean, we're putting him in a pretty tough spot. Let's be honest. I mean, with the roster that is going out there right now, but certainly the performance of the team over the last 4 weeks will be a factor in that decision.
And how about the head coach? What are you looking for now that you've gone from a head coach who was here a very long time and obviously had great success, and then a quick move with a former assistant? What are you looking for in a head coach?
I mean, Mike, just the same thing. You always look for a guy with leadership potential, a guy who is intelligent, and the old George Young thing, somebody who has something to prove. That was always a big factor. And the trend now is to take these young guys who are terrific offensive coordinators, and some of them have been very successful around the league, and that's certainly one of the things we look at. But I'm going to look at the other side of the ball too, on the defensive side. It's really about how smart is the guy, how organized is he, how much of a leader is he, and what kind of staff is he going to be able to put together. And I mean, those are all factors that you look at.
There's always been a thought that it would help if the Giant head coach had head coaching experience. Not a prerequisite for you, obviously, though, right?
Not a prerequisite. There are too many guys out there that are successful without having that kind of experience. And I will say, though, the toughest decision you ever make, and the most uncertain decision you ever make, is trying to project that successful offensive or defensive coordinator into a head coaching position. A lot of them are great at the one role, but when they step into the bigger role, they don't have the same success, and that's always the challenge that you have to face.
Absolutely the hardest thing in sports to do. There's nothing harder, because I always use the classic example. Bill Arnsparger was the most successful assistant coach of all time. He was storied. He got as much acclaim as the head coach, and went to the Giants and went 7-24 as a head coach. So it can happen to any assistant coach.
That's the example I always use too. Although in fairness to Bill, we didn't exactly help him with supplying.
Still, I mean, the guy was a legendary assistant, though. He was. He
was a great defensive coordinator, the no-name defense, and it killed the Dolphins when he left them, and we were so excited when we got him. But because we didn't have the other side of our football operation working back then, and weren't able to supply him with the talent, he never really had a chance.
So it's not a prerequisite, and you wouldn't automatically be looking, because of the problems recently for the offense. You won't automatically, although that's the way everyone seems to go these days. You're not automatically looking for a offensive head coach.
No, I want the best guy. It doesn't have to be an offensive coordinator. Obviously, that seems to be the trend, but it certainly could be a defensive coordinator, or even a special teams guy. I mean, John Harbaugh was a special teams guy, so they do come from that position as well.
Talking with John Mara, the owner of the Giants, about the jettisoning today of both the general manager and the head coach as we get ready for the next 4 games, or the final 4 games. John, the players who haven't got enough attention here, because they never do in this game, and the blame should be more put on them, but a couple of things. Eli this week, did you feel compelled to talk to Eli and have a sit-down with him anytime this week? And how did you feel internally Eli handled everything this week?
I thought I did sit down with him last week, and I thought he handled it like he handles everything, like a true professional, although he was emotional about it. And he got me emotional, too, and talking to him, because he's meant so much to our franchise. And I feel terrible that it went down that way. And you can always do things better in life, and I wish we could have done that one a little bit better. I actually called him today to try to give him a heads up on what we were doing, but because news gets out so fast, he said he had just heard it on the radio, so that didn't quite work out either. But listen, he handles everything that is put in front of him like the consummate professional that he is.
It's amazing, and I guess it shouldn't be how beloved in the league he is. He might be as popular and respected as anybody in the league. He really might.
I agree with that. That's because of the way he has played, but also the way he conducts himself on and off the field.
Yeah, no question. Now, I want to get to Olivier Vernon for a second, because he said something last week I couldn't believe, basically telling the fans to stay home if they didn't like that he still knelt down for the national anthem.
Yeah, Mike, that was a small part of his overall interview, and I think that was an emotional reaction on his part. And I've spoken with Olivier a few times about that whole issue, and he, as many people know, is the son of a retired police officer in South Florida, and
right.
I've spoken to him. I've explained to him why I think it's important to stand, and he just feels in his conscience that he has to make this statement. He's spoken to his father. His father, agrees with him on this, and I think at some point he will stand. But I want that to come from him rather than me trying to force it on him. And I know that's a very unpopular decision out there, and I'll get a lot of letters and emails.
And you already have, because I've been copied on a lot of them. I get copies of your letters, so I see them. And have you been surprised how much the fans have reacted to this issue?
Not really, just because I saw what the reaction was last year with Colin Kaepernick, and he wasn't even playing on our team, and so I knew when it happened with one of our own players that would only be, amplified, and it has been. And listen, the one thing that I will say about him is that he walks the walk. Also, he does as much stuff in the community for us. Every time he's asked to do something, whether it be visit a hospital or visit this police station or do whatever.
This is Vernon?
Yes, he goes out there and he does it. Okay, so he is a very decent human being, and people don't want to see that. A lot of people just look at him kneeling, but this guy is a good person, and he's somebody that I'm glad is on our team.
Do you feel there have been players on your team, John, that haven't given you a day's effort for a day's pay this year?
I think there are guys certainly that have underachieved. I'm not going to get into naming who they are, Mike. I think they know who they are, and I know people will speculate about that, but certainly guys have not played as well as we expected them to play.
Did you address the team as a whole, or will you address the team as a whole?
I'm not sure. They're off until Wednesday, and I may very well talk to them on Wednesday. That has yet to be determined. I want to talk to Steve about that first.
But you did talk to your assistants, right? You said...
I did. After I spoke to Steve, and
what did you tell him?
I went to them and I said that I told them the decision that we had made. I told them how difficult it was for me personally. I told them that I respected everyone in that room. I appreciated how hard they worked, and I expected them to get our guys ready to play and to try to win these last 4 games. I told them I would not tolerate any talk in this building that anybody's looking to tank anything. I want to try to win these games, and I expected them to do their part to try to get our players ready to play those games. And I thank them for everything that they've done for us so far, because these guys work hard. They do the best they can. It's just for a lot of different reasons, it just hasn't worked out.
And more than even see Webb or see a quarterback, you'd rather win these 4 games, right, than see anything else happen this year, right?
Absolutely right.
I mean, so people should understand that, because I don't think they do. I think they think that you initiated this so that you could have a better draft pick and that you could look at these young quarterbacks.
No, that's absolutely not true. Did I want to get a look at the quarterbacks if possible? Yes, but not. I did not want us to be even thinking about the tanking games. I would never allow that here. I have too much respect for the National Football League and for the integrity, of these games.
So do you still think it's important to see these quarterbacks the next couple of weeks, or would you rather they just turned it back over to Eli?
Well, I'll talk about that with Steve. I still think if it's possible to work these guys in, I'd like them to get worked in. But I want to talk it over with Steve. He's the head coach here. I think he was planning on talking to his offensive staff, and he'll probably have a conversation with Eli, and then he and I will talk with Kevin Abrams, and we'll sit down and we'll discuss that. And
what about a statement about Eli's future and what his future is with this franchise, John?
I think that, listen, I hope he stays with us. I think that's a discussion with whoever the next general manager and next head coach will be.
So it's not an automatic that he's not going to, that you're going to jettison him
absolutely not.
Off the roster?
Absolutely not. That decision certainly has not been made.
Were you stunned? 2 things that you mentioned. Number 1, were you shocked Eli didn't agree to this? Did you think he'd agree to it in the beginning?
My guy, I've already confessed to the fact that I was a little naive. I thought that he would agree to it, and after speaking to him, however, I realized why that was, not correct, and I certainly respect his reasoning there. I mean, he as much as anything thinks about what's best for the team as opposed to himself individually, and he didn't feel like it was the right decision for the team and for whoever the other quarterback was going to be, and I respect that. And listen, we could have handled it differently, but if people want to blame anybody, they can blame me for that. And
were you surprised by the reaction around the league, or were you surprised by how enormous it was?
I was not surprised that there was going to be an emotional reaction. I guess the magnitude of it probably was a little bit surprising, but even Eli joked about it, that all of a sudden everybody loves him and stuff. Well, I think that everybody's always loved him, but that was one thing that he joked about. But yeah, it was an enormous reaction. But when you look back at everything he's accomplished and everything he's meant to us, it was understandable.
And what's your message to your fans as they get ready to play these home games, especially this week with the Cowboys coming in?
We're going to try to win the games and do the best that we can. I mean, we're certainly shorthanded a little bit. I made the remark before. It's the first time that I've ever watched one of our regular season games and had to constantly look at the flip card to see which players we had in the games, because we have so many guys playing now that were either on the practice squad or who were on the street a few weeks ago. So it's a different roster, but the coaches will do the best they can, and we're going to try to win the games.
And one thing on the league with Jerry Jones coming in, one of your other hats as part of the compensation committee and as a longtime supporter of the commissioner, is the Jerry Jones versus the league stuff with the commissioner. Has that been settled? Is that still ongoing, or do you feel comfortable now it's been settled?
I think we're moving towards having that settled, and I expect that it will be settled, and that the contract will be agreed to in the near future.
Thanks, John, for coming on. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, guys.
All right, John Mara, the co-owner of the Giants, on a variety of subjects there, including Eli. He did not say Eli would start this week, but he did tell you he'd rather have Eli play well for 4 games and not see anybody else than anything else. He would rather win the games, and I think he got the idea now that tanking is not part of the idea. It's not something that's in the game plan going forward. And he was surprised by Eli's reaction, and there's nothing that the head coach could have done to save his job, and it was about wins and losses more than anything else, and that Jerry Reese was gone at the end of the season, so he felt no reason to keep him now, and that was very emotional, and they will begin immediately a search led by Ernie Accorsi for a general manager, and he would like the general manager to be in on the search for a new head coach, and it doesn't have to be an offensive coordinator, which is very much in vogue right now, nor does he have to have head coaching experience. And some of the candidates for the GM job may not even be employed by a team right now because you have to wait for the others. He did say that is a possibility, and he would even think of the dual job, meaning a mega coach. That would be a Cowher or a Saban if it was somebody that compelling. But his way is to have the 2 jobs split, which is the George Young way, and the way that the Giants have always chosen to operate under since the days of George Young. They would prefer to operate that way, but he didn't say it was imperative to operate that way. Back after this.